Whew. Okay. It's not often that I do a live stream on a Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday lunchtime. Here I am, but I've had an early finish at work. Got a week till Christmas, and let's dive in because a lot's happened. A lot has happened the last few days. Now, before we really dive in, I want to obviously discuss what happened in Sydney over the weekend, and obviously condolences go out to all our Australian viewers and subscribers. It's horrific what's happened in Sydney, but if hate wins, we're at the world's a worse off place. I think we're better than that. So, it was a shocking day. And it's a dark day, but I think Australia as a society can come out the other side and recover from it. There will be ramifications, obviously, for the politicians, the police, and security services, those in charge, and who knew what and when. There will be that, those questions need answering, and that anger can be rightly justified at those individuals. But now is not the time. But I thought I'd cover that. Now, on to sports side of things. Obviously, St Mirren beat Celtic in the Scottish League Cup final 3-1. Could have won by more, if I'm being honest. And then obviously, so well done, St Mirren. That means Celtic are winless with the current management in charge. So that's with is it Wilfred Darcy? Currently, they've lost all 3 games. Hearts have extended their lead at the top of the SPL. And Celtic, much like Rangers, having a very disappointing season and a lot of anger aimed at the Celtic board. So we'll see what happens in regards to Celtic and what goes on going forward. But they've missed out on their first piece of silverware, and St Mirren have got their first piece of silverware in a while. So that's, I think, a good thing for Scottish football. Rugby league news quickly. Featherstone Rovers, obviously in administration, players, it's officially been reported that they've been unpaid for 3 months. There's pressure on the RFL to pay the players' wages. They did so for Salford several times. Now the same is being asked of the RFL to step up. Considering they made a lot of money out of the Ashes series that we just had between Australia and England, 3 tests, there's a lot of pressure on the RFL to support the Featherstone Rovers, current and past players who are owed wages for the last 3 months, because players are going unpaid as things stand. And I think that worries me. That worries me as a rugby league fan, that Featherstone may not come out of this administration and may not survive to start next season, which is a bigger concern for rugby league as a whole, because that really impacts the Rugby League Championship next season. So there's that concern. But the big story over the last few days is obviously the FIFA ticket prices for the World Cup next year. Did a video on it, but there's been some backlash, obviously. Some backlash is an understatement. I think there's been a lot, but they've released some cheap tickets, $60. I think about 1,000 per game, 500 to 1,000 per game, 100,000 in total. At this point, are being priced at $60, which equates to £45, or I think about 40. Is it 48 euros? Is it 48 euros? I think it's 48 euros, £45, $60 for the cheapest tickets. But they're not lowering any of the other prices for tickets for the World Cup next year. But I think the backlash is going to continue to remain. I think fans can see through the real, oh, look, we've released some cheap tickets, kind of poor PR exercise. Even those in North America are being priced out. And I think FIFA have learned nothing from the disaster that was the Club World Cup. Let's be honest. That was a test event for the organisers and FIFA. Also, the Copa America last year was sort of seen as a bit of a test event. See how international games could be, like how fans from all over the world, etc., how they would feel about going to the US, getting to and from stadiums, that kind of fan experience. I don't think FIFA's really been paying attention to how badly those 2 tournaments performed as an event. And a lot of the criticism was ticket price. Who knew that the ticket price was going to be such a hot topic? But they've come up with this new entry-level tier for tickets at $60 priced. There's going to be 100,000 available throughout the tournament. A, that's not enough, and B, they're not lowering the prices for any of the others. They say that dynamic pricing isn't having an impact. They're not mentioning that officially, but come on, it's dynamic pricing. They've been forced, following backlash, to release some cheaper tickets. They've done so, and in reality, there's not enough of them, and the whole ticketing process is overly complicated. That's another thing that a lot of people have been very critical of. The bidding process, where you actually go into a ticket lottery, is very complicated. And the fact that at every game, each nation only gets 8% of the ticket, each FA only gets 8% of the match day ticketing allocation to sell to their own supporters groups and those who are registered with each domestic FA is just a slap in the face, really. I understand they obviously want to get as many new fans from the US, Canada, and Mexico going to games, buying tickets, buying merchandise, and experiencing the sport for the first time, or those casual fans, getting them to go to their first ever live games. I get that. But look at the ticket prices at a family of four. Jesus, that's several months' salary. That's, half a year's wages. It depends what bracket we're going for. And that was one of the criticisms of the Club World Cup, was that ticket prices were too high. From locals said the prices were too high. And what ended up happening was FIFA and the organisers just slashed ticket prices to the point where they were basically giving them away, and they still couldn't sell out stadiums. Now, yeah, some good deals were found by local fans in various cities. I get that. But that they got to a point where they basically had to reduce the ticket prices to such an extent that they were basically giving them away, and they still couldn't fill stadiums. Because I think the PR damage, has been done. I think the concern that I have for next year is that there will be a lot of empty seats, especially at the tournament. I think there will be a lot of unsold tickets. I don't care what FIFA say in their public press releases, that the interest is there and tickets have been sold. There's going to be empty seats at games. I can see boycotts. I can actually see fans from around the world boycotting. And of course, we don't know if these new visa restrictions and entry restrictions that the US is considering for 40 countries that don't require entry visas to the US in regards to social media history and your political leanings on entry, if that's going to be implemented or not, which everyone says is actually going to put people off coming to the US. You can be critical of the US government and US foreign policy or domestic policy or certain things that the US does, but still want to travel to the US for a variety of reasons. And with the World Cup coming up, and with a future Rugby World Cup in a few years' time as well, two of them actually, and an Olympics, that's a big step to take as a I wouldn't say foreign policy, it is domestic policy, but it is a big step to take. And there are those in the airline industry, in the hotel industry, in the tourism industry going, "You're gonna kill us. It's not looking good." And look, I mean, at the end of the day, obviously that's US government policy. It's an executive order, and again, there are those that have their views on the US politically, but the average American's just like the average, Brit, Aussie, Canadian, Mexican. Your average person's your average person. But I do think the ticketing pricing that they've approximated and how they're going about it is dynamic pricing, whether they admit it or not. And a lot of fans feel priced out. The tickets will still sell. People will still go. People will find a way. But to be 5 to 7 times higher for the cheapest tickets, apart from this new batch of, I think just over 1% of tickets a game, apart from this new batch of tickets that FIFA have just announced, I still think it's been a PR nightmare. There were concerns many months ago, actually, about what it would actually cost for tickets. There was that leaked document about from the bidding process, which said how much they were going to charge for tickets, which they've not kept to. And yeah, you can expect a little bit of leeway either way when it comes to approximating how much things will actually cost. And it's not a good look. I think FIFA have made themselves look completely out of touch, completely. And it's not a good look for the tournament, and it's not a good look for the three countries, because Canada and Mexico as well. It's not a good look. The average Mexican will not be able to afford to go. It's plain and simple. The average Mexican on their annual salary, and some of these tickets are their annual salary for some people in various parts of Mexico. If you're pricing out your host country's fans, God knows what's going to happen to overseas fans. And I don't think FIFA have quite figured out that they're not really factoring in the cost of flights, the cost of accommodation, food. It's just FIFA just the one thing they can control, and it's price gouging at its worst. Good afternoon. Long time no see. How are things in rugby league history land? Because they're pretty quiet here on the Western Front, but well, I am west of London. I can get away with that joke, yes. But yeah, it's been an interesting and saddening, I would say, few days. Obviously, with what's happened in Australia, and sadly, on a lot of rugby league fan pages that I've seen, there have been some very inflammatory posts and comments, which I find really that does anger me. And I was trying to record a video, and I was just like this. I just can't put this into words, and I don't think my words can convey what people in Sydney and in the Bondi area of Sydney and in Australia are feeling. I don't think any words that I can say can make up for what Australians are feeling right now. But it's the rugby league community, I think, has been impacted. There were those that are actually actively part of the rugby league media, playing group, club officials who actually live in the Bondi area and work in the Bondi area, who witnessed what was going on. But there has been some inflammatory language used by some in a position of responsibility, and also there is definitely, in my opinion, a nasty undercurrent in society at the moment, but on the political side of things, which I think, there's a lot of social ills right now. Our country's going through a lot of things politically and socially and economically, but we need to stick together as a society and try to work solutions out rather than divide. But that's my view on things. I'm all right, I suppose. I mean, I've got to do a membership video at some point, because I have been going through a bit of a tough time lately away from the channel. My brother's not particularly well, and work's a bit crap at the moment, but it's life, innit? I am looking forward to Christmas. We've got a week to go. And it's Christmas Eve. Where has the time gone? We've got basically 2 weeks left of the year. How quickly it's gone has just amazed me. There will obviously be a video on Christmas Day, and there'll be a video on New Year's Day. Just happy Christmas and happy New Year's, basically. And also there'll be a Christmas live stream. I don't know if I'm going to do it Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or Boxing Day, but I will be wearing my ugly hockey jersey, my ugly Christmas hockey jersey that I've had for many years now. I think I got that in 2018. So I've had it a while, my ugly jersey, my ugly Christmas jersey. I will be wearing that, which comes out, it literally comes out once a year for the ugliness factor. I've got to find my ugly Christmas jumper as well. It's somewhere in the wardrobe. I've got to dig that out, because that is truly hideous. That also comes out once a year. So I've got my ugly Christmas hockey jersey and the ugly Christmas jumper. Although I've got to be a little bit careful with the ugly Christmas jumper, because it's got some untasteful language on the front, which some people may not agree with, but it is ugly. The channel has been going well with recent videos. Yeah, look, it's good to see a fellow creator doing well. Obviously, we support each other, which I think is good. I've still got to get hold of Pommy and Oz, a fellow creator, he's English bloke. He lives in Melbourne. Got to message him and sort out I think a conference call kind of YouTube video. I've got to message him and figure out how we're gonna do some shared content, because he wanted to do like a weird, like kind of like a live stream interview kind of thing, um, which would be kind of cool. So yeah, but we do our best, I think, on this platform to support each other in various ways. It's good to see a fellow creator doing well. It's good to see that you are doing well, but you're more focused. Your niche is literally the history of rugby league, and I think that's a good niche to have. A lot of the rugby league creators who are solely rugby league creators, a lot of them, and I do find this, a lot of them just regurgitate. I do stress this: regurgitate what the mainstream sports media has to say. There's a lot of sameness with a lot of the podcasts, which I just find a bit repetitive. Some of them I've tuned off. I don't listen to Virgo and the Freak anymore. It's just every other word is just an F bomb, and it's just like, okay, there's a reason why under 16s in Australia are now banned from social media. It's in part because, while they were funny, they are a bit, they have a bit tongue in cheek. They do come across as a bit embittered middle-aged men who failed in life. I gave them a go listening, but I had to give up. It just got constantly, it was just constant expletives with them. The bloke in a bar, that's more of just a constant advertising spiel for, just his lager. I would say this about James Graham's buy round. I'm still a little bit disappointed that they still are sponsored by Ladbrokes in a sense. I understand, obviously, they want to avoid as many ads as possible, and they do get by with a fair bit of sponsorship. But considering what happened with Brandon Smith and the allegations against Brandon Smith, now, of course, still got to go through the court process. It's gone very quiet there with what's going on with Brandon Smith. The fact that there's one of their title sponsors on that podcast is a gambling firm, for me, is poor form. And it's the same with Paul Kent as well, and Kenty Blitzed and Kenty Primetime, his podcast. Again, with what's happening with Brandon Smith, and he gets on very well with Brandon Smith with the gambling allegations and potential spot fixing or whatever allegations that Brandon Smith is facing, his legal issues. I think that is poor form that those two podcasts have got gambling sponsors. I think. And also, one thing that I think James, the boy around, has failed to do is make comment on the Brandon Smith allegations and just say, look, he's not going to appear on the podcast while his legal issues are, even just a brief statement. I think that was poor form on their part. Whether he comes back onto the boy around or whether they've actually severed commercial ties is going to be interesting. At least Paul Kent and his podcast did make reference to it and actually said, look, we're not going to hide from this. These are serious allegations. Whether they're proven or not is another thing. Court of law and all that, and right to fair hearing and fair trial and etc. Because obviously Paul Kent's had his own legal issues, and a lot of people found him guilty before trial and all that. But I love having a bad back. It's a thing you get when you hit your mid-30s. But it's more comfortable. But oh shit! I know I've just run over some of my fucking cables. Yeah, I think it's good you've got your niche in the rugby league creators. And look, the fact you do have, obviously, your tipping and all that. A lot of fantasy people have their fantasy league teams and bits and pieces, and of course, that's your prerogative, and you've obviously worked out, your previews and reviews. That obviously does well for you, and that's fine. I mean, I did do a thing where I did do the round review and the round preview. I think my reviews, did better than my previews when it came to the NRL. And I'm going to continue with that next year. Do the match reviews, where I just do the round review. And then I look at the ladder and I put down where teams are now sitting on the ladder. I think I might tweak that a little bit. In regards to Fergo and the Freak, they constantly slag off former England players, clubs, look, we can all agree that the RFL aren't doing a good job in regards to the game's administration. I think we can all agree on that. We can all agree on that. And there are aspects of the game that we are as fans and stakeholders, I think we can be critical of, and that includes club owners, the IMG grading, the structure of the regular season and the Challenge Cup, and whether we should flip it back to a winter season. We can all have a debate around it. But Ferg the Free, it's just constant slag off. But they can never really, in my opinion, I don't think. To be honest, they just sound like two very bitter middle-aged men who've got a drink problem, who somehow have got a following on social media. They're not doing that well on YouTube, mind. Their view counts on YouTube and their subscriber count is actually for a supposed podcast that's meant to be doing really well. It's not as strong as they think. I've got a lot of criticism. I think, look, obviously Aussies are known for their colourful language, and I think most sports YouTubers do have a bit of colourful language. But I realised very, very quickly, if to be a success on YouTube, you've got to have PG content, basically. Because the reactionary videos, or those, I wouldn't call them clickbait, but those rage bait, as I'll call them, where you're ranting, you're swearing a lot. That one or two of them might hit, you might get a load of views, but then people won't take you seriously. That's why I can't take Mark Goldbridge seriously, because he's just a Christ merchant. I cannot take him seriously as a creator, but he's built a following. But then a lot of people can't take him seriously. Some people actually just watch just to take the piss out of him. Yes, he's been very successful doing it, but I think there's an element of, you've got to be, I don't know, I wouldn't say professional, but at least, presentable in a sense. Balanced. I understand that you've got to have a little bit of traditionalism and a little bit of expansion. I think you've got to have a balance. In a sense. But I'm not a massive. I gave him a go. I think you recommended Ferg and the Freak to me, and I gave him a watch. I gave him a listen. I gave it a go for about 6 months, and then after a while, it was like, there's nothing different about what they're talking about. It's constant. Criticize the same people constantly, and then salivate over the same people constantly, which was cringe. And then just every other word is, we're going to swear a lot. Now, I understand Aussies, they do like having a bit of colourful language every now and then and making things a bit colourful. But there's point me going, I don't think every Aussie in a local bar or a pub is going to be, every other word is going to be an F-bomb. I think there's going to be a bit of banter, yes. But at the end of the day, if you're in, like, I wouldn't say polite company, but if you're like meeting someone for the first time and having that conversation about sport, you could say, oh, XYZ gives me the shits. XYZ's a bit of a bastard. But then to carry on the whole hour and a half, 2-hour podcast with just verbal censorship, because I can't see it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think I don't read too much into it. I don't follow them anymore. I don't listen to them anymore. I just found it very repetitive, and it was just, it's just a lot of them. I think I find a lot of rugby league podcasters and some AFL podcasters as well. A lot of them are very similar. There's not a lot of variety. And a lot of them, like, they I wouldn't say they coexist, but they collaborate a lot. And it's just like, there's a lot of you that do the same stuff. You're all mates with them, and you're all giving each other a pat on the back for how well you're doing. When in reality, it's garbage. A lot of it's garbage. But fair play to them for being successful, fine. But a lot of it is just utter garbage. And those, I think, is it Rugby League Guru? I mean, God, he's just full of shite, that boy. He looks like he ate a lot of it and all. He spouts it. And then bloke in a bar, I mean, Dean and Kemp, average player. Fair enough, he actually played first grade. I can't knock him for that. But he weren't the best. He had a couple of good games. But then he couldn't really hack being in the NRL. Struggled to even hold down a spot at times in reserve grade. and yet he's trying to stay relevant. Yeah, look, Fergo. I mean, yeah, some of their. I can't disagree with the fact that they have an opinion in that sense. I think they're allowed to have an opinion, but there's a point where you got to go. Do they, listen to themselves, or do they just spout this for reaction and clickbait? Because I don't know how anyone can take them seriously. It's like Clarkie's rugby league column is just shite. I watched a couple of his live streams and then I left a couple of comments and he basically replied to me as if I was thick and ignorant. And I'm just like, fuck off. Don't treat your audience as thick and ignorant. There is no such thing as a stupid question. A lot of the viewers of this channel, especially from the US and Canada, who may be new to rugby union or new to rugby league or new to association football or whatever sport that I'm talking about that's not traditional in the US and Canada, I've always said to them, any new viewer, it doesn't even matter if it's an English person who's just stumbled across the NHL or the NBA for the first time. I always say to them, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And, there's no such thing as asking it, because if you really are new to a sport and you want to learn, how else are you going to learn? Like when someone says, what team should I follow? Pick your team. If you're new, pick it, have your own reason for it. If it's the underdog, you like their kit, you researched a little bit of the history and and whatever it may be, or you've researched a famous player who played for them or a high profile player, and stick with it. And that's for those who are, from the non-traditional markets. And or watch a game or watch a handful of games. Cherry pick all the different teams, and then if you watch every single team play, go, I like that team's style, or I like that particular how that player or group of players play. It's the same with I've sent some of my US subscribers. Some of them actually follow me on Instagram, and I've actually sent them clips of various players and all that. And I've sent them links to some YouTube videos I've found and some websites where they could, engage and read up on the history and things. I think I've even sent links to your page. And so I've got that kind of engagement. That's part of what this channel is all about. Part of what your channel is all about is when you get those new viewers who are new to the sport and they engage and they ask the questions. I always find there's no such thing as a stupid question. It's when the creator, so Mark Goldbridge treats his audience like they're thick, let's be honest. I can't stand Mark Goldbridge, for example. How the Bundesliga thought he's a good person to team up with, just watch long is just painful, but that's what they decided to do. I wouldn't say all of the NRL news on Facebook and Instagram are terrible, or any sports news kind of updates, but some of them, in what way is Clarkie's rugby league column caused controversy? What I find is he just spouts and regurgitates what Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 10, Sky and Fox over in Australia spout. He just spouts the narrative. He just regurgitates what the mainstream media has to say. I don't know what controversy has he caused, because I gave up following him. I mean, I see what sometimes he has to say, because he obviously reposts stuff, because I'm not paying for a subscription to the Daily Telegraph Australia. I'm not paying that money. Sorry. So if he reposts something, yeah, okay, he's reposted. This has been reported in the Courier Mail or the Telegraph or the Australian or whatever publication it is. That's fine. But I just find he just comes out with drivel. His own opinions are just drivel. The fact he's a Gold Coast Titans fan and actually believes that they actually might have a chance every year is just delusional. But I'm sure if he stumbled across my channel, he'd probably have the same opinion of my channel or even your channel and go, I don't agree with this. Fine. But I do find a lot of them just regurgitate. And also, a lot of the podcasts have the same guests, and the guests will regurgitate the same well-known story of the yarn of which is normally a drinking related story, which is just like, okay, it just shows that a lot of rugby league players are alcoholics. Can we just have a sober story where like there's no alcohol involved? That's just I think that's part of the problem that rugby league has is the drink culture. I understand the working class roots of the sport. That's why we love it, because we get that kind of engagement. But I have the occasional can of lager. I don't drink spirits anymore. I don't drink every day anymore. I can go months, if not years at a time, not having a drink these days. But which I have done recently. The last year or so, I've been having a drink every now and then. But some of the rugby league podcasts, it's always a drink related incident that is part of the interview, and they talk about it, and it's just like, but I've heard this story told 9 different ways by the same person, and they've been asked the same question. It's on repeat. I find that boring. Don't get me wrong. Some of the drinking yarns are quite funny. Some of the stories are quite funny, but it's like the story that's told about what's his name? Used to play for the Roosters and Luke Keary when he leaves the Bunnies and the fallout he had with Russell Crowe. That story's been retold multiple times. Not just by Luke Keary, but by others who were there as well. And all of it's slightly different, but it just shows that the drink culture, unfortunately, still has a big part to play in rugby league, be it the NRL or Super League. There's still that, unfortunately, that is still a big part of the sport, and I think there's more negatives than positives to it. Yeah, we love having the characters in the sport, and I think we have a lack of that right now. I get that we can relate to, where they're not droids and robots. But there's a point where you're going, you're professional athletes and you're paid stupid money in real terms compared to the normal average you or me to, okay, admittedly your career's short, to have a good career, obviously, hopefully 10, 15 years if you're at the top end. Even if it's a 5-year top flight grade, first grade, and then you're just constantly on the drink. And then we hear all the rather shocking post-retirement and even stories of domestic violence and alcohol-related violence and drink problems, drug problems, and a lot of the negative headlines to do with past and present players when they get in trouble. And we've seen some already this off-season and pre-season with a handful of players and past and present having legal issues. I think is a good way to look at it. And they're very damaging headlines. But it's become so normalized now, and we've become so accepting of this being the norm, rather than, oh, this is shocking, and that we sort of just go, another, like Wendell Sailor's recent legal issues or Josh Maguire. It's just, and it's not their first time having issues with the authorities, and you just go, okay. Like domestic violence allegations or child abuse allegations are serious. And what Wendell Sailor's been accused of is deeply worrying, because that, again, is not his first rodeo if it is true that there were drugs involved. The Brandon Smith allegations are deeply concerning. Obviously we've had Victor Radley obviously missed the Ashes Test series, and he's going to miss the start of the NRL season in 2-3 months' time. He's going to miss some game time. And that's the one negative, I think, is the off-field antics of players, past and present, when they get themselves in trouble and they do these silly things, and it hurts the image of the game. Because there's so many great players who played the game who are upstanding, really good in the community, hard-working post-retirement in whatever field they choose. And then you have these negative headlines. There's that Reddit thread of NRL scandals of past and current players who've done stuff, and it's now still active on Reddit, and there's about 300-400 Redditors who've gone through and done their homework, and that's it's like the NFL. There's a website dedicated to NFL players who've got criminal charges pending, and that's that's worrying. That's worrying. But I want to. What kind of controversy has Clarkie's rugby league column caused? I'm curious because I don't watch his YouTube channel anymore, and his Facebook page. I just have a little look at some of the stuff he's reposting about to do with players. A lot of it's just filler at this time of year, going, "Oh, this player's been linked with this player's been linked with that." It's like, well, until they actually sign with a club and until they, you know, terminate a contract, or until they announce their retirement, there's no point. It's just, I'm just trying to figure out what kind of controversy he's caused. I think that would be the more interesting bit. I just find that he just regurgitates drivel, really. That's my viewpoint on the mainstream media in Australia as well, especially the sports media is pretty toxic. And the Aussie media, I think, is very similar to our media over here. Our sports media is pretty bad, if I'm being honest. And I say pretty bad, not loosely, but I would say our sports media, our sports journos, for the most part, I mean, there are some very good ones, but unfortunately, there's a very toxic media culture, and there has been for a long time. And that's another reason why I like what your channel stands for, what this channel stands for. There's a few other channels that I follow. Obviously, I follow the hockey guy. He's a Canadian. He covers the NHL. I appreciate what he stands for. I appreciate what your channel stands for and how you conduct yourself as well. And it's unfortunately there are many on social media in the YouTube space or the Patreon space, so those video sharing websites, who are very, very similar to the mainstream media. And I think if Clarkie's rugby league column is wanted to be taken seriously, he needs to stop regurgitating and spouting the mainstream media narrative, which is what he's doing. That's how he's got big. It's just regurgitation of crap. But obviously it's successful for him because he's able to do it. But look, at the end of the day, when it comes to controversy, I don't know exactly how he's controversial. I just think, much like a lot of the podcasts over in Australia, it's much the sameness. There's not a lot, in my opinion, that was different. They all seem to know each other, which I find a bit weird. And they all seem to like fake friendship, I think is a way of looking at it. Because they know it's making them money. It's just economy. It's just, it's just making them money. And a lot of them, I wouldn't be surprised, don't get on off camera. I think a lot of it's forced and staged. At least it seems that way. And I wouldn't be surprised if off camera, a lot of them don't get on with each other. They're just doing it because of the economics. Makes them all look good that they're all matey. It'd be very interesting if there was one podcast that fell out with all the others and just sort of told some truths and ruffled a few feathers, because that'd be kind of interesting. Because none of them criticise anyone else. They don't call out another podcast for having a specific guest on or talking about a specific subject. It always seems it's the same kind of... There doesn't seem to be enough calling out of the bad behaviour. There doesn't seem to be enough of holding each other to account. and it's all basically just regurgitation. They're all on the same podcast platforms, and they all appear on each other's podcasts, which I find really interesting. It's just. But I'm interested in what kind of controversy. Actually, I'm gonna have a little look, see what ChatGPT can tell me about what kind of controversy he's caused. I don't think he's that controversial. I just don't rate his content because he's just copy and paste, bit plagiarism. It's almost as if his opinion is sort of made up, but he's probably got an opinion. I just, in my opinion, I think I'm interested now in what controversy. How do you spell controversy? What controversy? Now you're making me research stuff now. Rugby League. Now, is this channel called Clarkie's Rugby League Column or Rugby League Podcast? I can't remember. Right, let's have a look. Let's see what. Let's have. Oh, the AI has come back with stuff. Clarkie's Rugby League Column, run by Dane. They don't give his surname, which is interesting. Frequently generates discussion and debate. This is the AI's, found some stuff rather than a single major controversy. The controversies are typically the result of strong opinions, player comparisons, and criticisms of clubs and players that polarise the rugby league. I could sneeze and it would polarise the rugby league community. Perceived bias against specific clubs, yet. The Bulldogs, yeah, actually, he does have a thing against them. Player comparison and criticism. For instance, post comparing Mitchell Pearce's scrutiny to Nathan Cleary's into a heated debate, with some arguing that Cleary had not received the same level. He has, but there we go. Use of AI to potentially deflect personal attacks. Clarkey has sometimes used AI to generate rankings or opinions. Yes, he has. He has used AI. I do know that. Journalistic practices and apologies. Clarkey has faced scrutiny over specific stories and has to apologise to players as well. The case with Josh Maguire. The column has also been part of the broader media landscape of that some club chief executives feel contributes to the media fire that can dictate the severity of punishments for players involved in off-field incidents. Well, he regurgitates the mainstream media. The column started as an NRL jokes and memes page, which wasn't very funny, actually, to be fair. I stumbled across it when he was actually trying to be serious. And has evolved into a news analysis hub that still utilises provocative content and opinionated takes to engage its large following, often leading to arguments in the comment section where users call him a flog or a has-been. The fact he's been going 10 years worries me. Wow. Let's see what the AI assistant has to say about my channel. Okay, well, it's interesting. What we got? Oh, bollocks! This is what I don't like about fucking. I can't even spell. That would help. If I actually spelt, that would actually help. Oh, right. Let's see what have we got. Da, 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 right. Let's see what it comes up with when I just type that. It doesn't come up with anything on. Oh, hang on. Go back. The AI overview. If I type in my channel name, this is really. So the sports boffin can refer to several things. A nickname for Belgian football players Danny Boffin and Ruud Boffin. Sports science consult. There's a sports science consultancy recruitment firm called Boffin, or a general sport term for sports expert scientists. Those featured on YouTube, which is me. Oh wow! So the key people and entities. So if you go just type in the sports boffin on Google search on your smartphone. The key people and entities. I'm the fourth one on the list. A YouTube channel creating content across various sports like football, NFL, and more. I know an AI term. The sports boffin is simply an expert or enthusiast in sports, often implied to scientists, analysts, deeply knowledgeable individuals. So that could be you as well, Mr. Rugby League History. To identify words which sports boffin is relevant, you need more context. There's a couple of football players with the surname Boffin, actually. And then yeah, so we make it onto the Google AI overview. We're the fourth. We are actually the fourth one, and we come up on the AI overview on YouTube. And to prove that I'm not lying, here's the AI overview. And if I scroll down, and if you can zoom in, we're there. So I'm kind of happy that I've made the AI overview. I'm quite happy now. I'm quite happy now. I've made it in life. I'm now a Google search term. I never thought I'd see the day where I was a Google search term. That's made my day, Daz. That's made me chuckle because things have been a bit tough on a personal level recently. But that's made my day a little bit. I never, as I say, never thought I would see the day where on the Google search bar with the AI assistant that I'd be the fourth one down on the key entities and people. So yeah, we're making progress. People are actually searching us, using me as a search term. I wonder what percentage of Google, searches are the sports boffin. That'd be kind of interesting. How many searches per day? Is it 1? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 5? I don't know, but it'd be interesting. Be interesting. In regards to those on YouTube sparking controversy, I think everyone has had that one controversial take or that argument with a viewer in the comments section, or whatever it may be. And it also define what would you define as a controversy? Obviously, we saw with was it Jake or Logan Paul that went to Japan back in 2017, which led to a lot of controversy on the platform, or both of them actually. That you couldn't argue was not only just controversial; it was quite offensive. And that's another reason why I think I did the Australia my views on the Australian ban of social media for under 16s. I think there has been a lot of controversial material on social media. I think you could argue that social media is not working how we all thought it was originally intended. I think it's evolved in a negative way. At the same time, I think YouTube, is in a decent place. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's better than what it was in 2017 and 2018 and that point. I think there is still controversial content on the platform. I think we can all agree on that. I think there are those creators who do take unnecessary risks, and there's those creators that I think put out and create harmful content. Are they as numerous as what they were a decade ago? No. Are there still controversies on the platform? Yes. Some of them have now moved into the podcast space, and that's a separate, talking point, and a separate, what some of the controversial takes that we've seen on interviews, for example. And there are some, and of course, some of these podcasters put the video version on YouTube as well, which you can also get the podcast on Spotify, for example, or Podbean, or whatever the podcast hosting service is. And there are going to be controversial moments, controversial interviews. I think there's been a couple of NRL players, for example, have given interviews on podcasts, and that's come back to bite them a little bit. It wasn't Cobbo? It was who was it? It was it Selwyn Cobbo? I think it might have been, actually, when Kevin Walters was first appointed coach. I think he was giving an interview, and he basically said some things during the interview that didn't go down well with the Broncos hierarchy, and the media jumped upon it. The mainstream media jumped upon it, and it blew up a little bit. I think he made comments that he didn't think Kevin Walters was a great coach, and that he was too matey with the players and whatever. And then not long after that, I think the Broncos, the following season, obviously made the 2020. I think it was in 2022, and the following year they obviously make the grand final. And then if you go over to North America, you've got Sean Avery, the former NHL player, and he's created a lot of controversy with a lot of his podcasts, interviews. One time, Clarkey said that anyone who criticizes him is a salty bit. Mate, we're allowed to criticize him. We are. I've faced criticism. There's my Dan Rowan video that I did back in 2018. It's one of the most popular videos on the channel. I personally hate it, and I got some hate for that. I think other one, there was one of the Wales Six Nations videos, match reviews I did. I got some fair bit of abuse. And I've had some highly critical comments. I'm not on the same level as Clarkey's rugby league column, I don't think, but at the end of the day, there's a few of my videos that have managed to get some decent views. Crikey, his most popular video is him, actually, I don't know if it's fair use or not, the Honey Badger, Nick Cummings, using a highlight reel of Nick Cummings and some of Nick Cummings' tongue-in-cheek kind of interviews. That's what made Clarkey's rugby league column famous. Now, the fact that I can't speak of, as I say, I follow, obviously, the NRL, and obviously, therefore, you have to follow the Australian media a little bit. And there are some NRL podcasts I do listen to. I do like the buy around. Sometimes James Graham, I think some of his opinions I don't agree with. I don't agree with everything that James Graham says. But I'm coming at from a fan point of view and a wider range, looking at all the sports that we cover. And the fact that some of my mates have played professional and semi-pro sport, and I've seen them train, I've seen them play through injury. Like I've, seen some of them have to retire in their 20s because their bodies are wrecked. And some of them are younger than me, and they're like, I've had to give up because, my mate Rob's had a double knee replacement. He's had 2 double knee replacements. He's 30, is he 32, 33, my mate Rob? I've got to message him actually, see how he's doing. But my mate Rob has had 2 double knee replacements before he was 30. He had to stop playing when he was like 23, 24 football. Admittedly, it was non-league, but he's now the social media manager of one of the Reading football clubs in the non-league. Not Reading itself. I think it's Reading Town or Reading City FC, one of them. He's now the social media manager of one of the Reading non-league clubs. And I gave him a bit of advice. I said, look, mate, if I can make a little bit of money off this platform as well, I said, if I can make money off this platform, you're going to be fine. Try and be as natural as possible, But yeah, I had to see him, give up playing and refereeing as well, because he was a referee, because his knees were shot. And I've actually seen him struggling to walk. He actually at one point was struggling to walk, and he was, he's got kids, and he couldn't take the kids down the park and push them on the swing because he couldn't stand up. His knees were that bad. And to see like one of your mates go through like double knee replacement, two of them, pretty bad. Well, the fact that he slags off those he criticises. If you're going to be in the public space, you've got to take some criticism, or have at least debate from different points of view. And there's a way of doing it, and there's a way of not doing it. In regards to being blacklisted by a lot of players, he claims to be matey with a lot of them, and I find that a bit cringe. Now, if you've got a good friend who's gone through the system, is now playing professional or semi-pro, then yeah, okay, you've got a friend in professional sport or semi-professional sport. I've got a few. That's cool. Okay, that's cool. You can support your mate, and if your mate can go, look, I can sort you out. I know you're on social media, but it might be a good thing. I can sort you out a couple of interviews with a couple of my current and past teammates. That's something. But he did try and blag that he was mates with a lot of players. I do remember that. There was one video where he was like trying to big up the fact he knew a couple of players. Big deal. Big deal. I know a couple of professional rugby union players. Big deal. I know a couple of professional ice hockey players. Big deal. They're not household names by any means. If you're not a British ice hockey fan or a hardcore rugby premiership fan, you probably wouldn't know what I'm talking about. One of them was my old schoolmate. But there's a point where you go, I'm not that matey with them. I just know them. Doesn't mean I'm going to get an interview. It doesn't mean I'm going to get, to sit down and do a podcast with them. It'd be kind of cool if I could get a couple of former players on a podcast. That'd be kind of interesting, but it's not going to happen. I know a couple of professional boxers, partly because two of my mates are boxing trainers. So, that kind of helps. There's only one professional boxer I'm actually decent friends with. Again, I'm not going to throw names out there. Unless you are really a boxing nerd and you are following British boxing right now at the lower levels of professionalism, and you're looking at some of the professional fighters that are coming through the ranks, you would not know who I'm talking about. So unless you really are a sports nerd, and I mean more nerdy than me, and you really dive in and you are diving down that rabbit hole where you're watching, some of the lower level professional boxing where these guys are up and coming fighters, they're grinding away, they're earning very limited money, but they are classed as professionals. You would not know who I'm talking about. So the fact he was trying to pass off that he had all these players' numbers and BS, he might have met him out of function. Might have said, look, can I give you a call so you're on the podcast? It's just for clout. The fact that he has been blacklisted by Phil Rothfield, I wouldn't be surprised that's in part because he's been plagiarising the Daily Telegraph. I think some other publications, now I know the controversy, I think some other publications, have been a bit critical of, hey, you're using our content without prior authorization. At least I'm not surprised Rothfield, but I'm not a big fan of Buzz. I understand that Buzz Rothfield's been in the sports media a very, very long time. And I do listen to the podcast he has. He does, but I understand it. He's been in the media a long time. He's one of the old journos, old school. Is he my favourite? No, I'm not a massive fan of Buzz Rothfield. I do think it's time for Buzz to put down the pen, hang up the pen, and let the next generation come through. But I'm not surprised. He's the chief sports editor of the Daily Telegraph. I'm not surprised that he's forced an apology out of Clarkie's Rugby League column for plagiarising their work, or at least using their work not in a fair use context, where he goes, look, can I use your article as a reference? I'm making some content on social media. I would like to use your article as a reference source. That's the professional way of doing it. But he just comes across as he's just doing it for social media clout. A lot of them are. They don't. The fact he was I believe he was in the Australian Defence Force. I don't know if he was a reservist or if he was full time when he started. And I'm thinking, Australian taxpayers are paying you to be a soldier or in the Navy, in the Defence Forces, a sailor or a soldier, and you're spending most of your time on social media, doesn't go down well. If he's on leave and goes, right, every so often I'll post a video, whatever, that's different. But it was just like, mate, you're getting paid to be an active military personnel. I'm not against active military personnel having hobbies because, hey, I was born in an army base. I was born in an army hospital. My dad did 24 years of basically half my dad's life. He was in the armed forces, just under. I'm from an army family. I get it. My dad and my uncle, and they're all avid sportsmen, whatever. But at some point, you've got to think, hang on, you're taking the piss here a little bit. That's one thing I went, Australian taxpayers are paying for you to sit on your arse right now and talk crap about rugby league. I mean, what? I don't want to spend the entire live stream criticising another fellow creator because, yeah, look, we can be critical. And I'm sure if he was to stumble across this, he could be critical of me and my content. Not that he would know half the stuff that I was talking about on this channel. But I've not gone out there and pretended that, I'm really good mates with all the NRL players and I'm not ripping off, other journalists' hard work, whether you can call some of the journalism hard work, I don't know. But I remember the Gold Coast beating Brisbane a couple of times, and yeah, that was just embarrassing. I just went, mate, look, okay, you're a Titans fan, you won, cool. Okay, Brisbane are not playing well the last couple of seasons, fine. Neither of you are making the top 8. Let's be honest. Neither side's going to win it. Okay, obviously Brisbane have been to 2 grand finals in recent years and won one, but at that point, it's like neither of you are close to winning this season. One of his friends, rugby league, in my own opinion, is the same. He blocks anyone who says something he disagrees with. Yeah, that's because they're petulant children. They've been brought up with participation medals. Bear that in mind. I'm of the generation old enough when we participated on sports day. If you came last, you fucking came last. You didn't get the gold star for taking part. You had to top 3, yeah. If you finished in this, say you were doing. I mean, I remember one year I did the cross country, the annual cross country tournament that we had, and I finished 6th out of like 120, and that was on my birthday. It was snowy, it was cold, but because I finished in the top 10, that was a fair play. And I think there was some cross country trials that were going in county at the time, and I was like the 17th best in county on that particular day. And it was a horrible day because it was snowing, it was cold, the temperature dropped. There had been heavy rain the week building up, so some of the course was actually boggy. And because of the distance that we did, yeah, I think I was like 17th or 18th in county that day, and I was 6th overall in my particular race at Moscow. There is that. I have come across rugby league, in my own opinion, I think once or twice on a Clarkie's Rugby League column live stream, and I just thought, you're both real thick people. I'm not a massive fan. Again, much like Fergo and the Freak, gave him an opportunity, as in watched his content for a bit, gave up on it because it was just some of the stuff they were talking about. I mean, they claim they watched the game, right? And I'm thinking, if you truly watch this sport week in, week out, like you claim you do, even though at that time I think he was actually actively on, active military personnel, I think you cannot be actively. Because if you're in the armed forces, even as a reservist, you can get emergency call-up for emergency training and all sorts. You would not have the free time. Trust me, you would not have the free time. You get weekend leave every now and then. Just come on. Well, Gold Coast, look, I've got nothing against Gold Coast fans. I have a secret soft spot for them. I want to see the Titans do well. I do, actually. I think it's important that the competition has strong clubs in Queensland. All of them, not just the Broncos. I think the Cowboys need to be strong. The Titans need to be strong. And even the Dolphins. I think that is important for the NRL that you have a strong Queensland contingent in the league. I want to see the Titans do well. I want to see the Dolphins do well. I want to see the Cowboys do well. I think Brisbane, the Broncos, not a massive fan of them, but I want to see them do well. I want to see the Cowboys, the Dolphins, and the Titans do well. I have a soft spot for those 3 teams. I do. I'm not going to lie. But they've been badly run for a very long time, and they've been very mediocre. They haven't had many wooden spoons, though, but they've been very mediocre for a long time. To be fair, I like Gold Coast Stadium more than Suncorp. I don't know why. And crowds have been better at the Titans at Robina Stadium, the Gold Coast Stadium. They have been better in recent seasons. You can see that. There's definitely more memberships now. There's definitely better attendances at Gold Coast Titans games than pre-pandemic. I think we can all agree on that. The attendance has improved. But I will say this, and I'm going to say this. They are still, hopefully with the new investment from Matty Johns and Gordon Tallis, with their engagement and buying an ownership stake from the, alongside investing in the club, I think that could potentially, again, create more interest and conversation. And because they're involved, and I think Andrew Johns is involved as well, that might encourage more of the juniors to go, I want to stay with the Titans system, which I think is a big part of the problem of why the team's been mediocre, is they've got this big catchment area and they haven't utilised it effectively. But also they've made some horrendous signings. They need a better director of football or GM of football operations. We shall see how they go this season. Let's just say that. But when I get to the season previews, that'll be interesting. Do I think Sean Wayne would be kept as England head coach if he was to go? Who would like to bring in? I think Sean Wayne, he's got to go. And you've got to look at the selectors as well. There were some real blunders made with the selection for this Ashes series just gone. But I also think the RFL needs to have a real restructuring. I've always been clear, I'm not a fan of the IMG grading. I think it goes against our sporting culture. I think we need to look at why the TV deal we currently have is as bad as it is, because that's on the RFL. They negotiated that with the broadcasters. I think we were making a step in the right direction with the involvement of Channel 4 and, of course, BBC. But the problem is, who do you replace him with? I'll be honest. Do you replace him with an Australian coach or a Kiwi coach? Do you try and lure Michael Maguire away from Brisbane now that he's won State of Origin, won his second Premiership in the NRL? Of course, I think Maguire had some success over here in the Super League. He actually does know the Super League. He has coached in Super League. Do you try and lure him away, even though he's the Brisbane head coach? Do you try and do that? I wouldn't mind having Michael Maguire as England head coach, because you could clearly see the fitness was an issue for the players. Fitness was a key problem. Doesn't matter how well or badly you're playing. If fitness is a big issue, at about 60-minute mark, you fall apart fitness-wise and discipline-wise, because tired bodies make mistakes. If you fall apart at around 60 minutes out of the 80, that's fitness. That is fitness. The fact that they were a bit clunky in attack is irrelevant. 2 tries scored is not good enough. But at 60 minutes in all 3 games, they fell away. That was the moment where the games were completely blown out. Apart from game 2, which was always close, but they had it. They had Australia wobbling and they didn't take advantage. That's game management. But again, 60 minutes, about then, that's when the game was finally safe for Australia. So Michael Maguire, that fitness paid off for Brisbane in the grand final. One of the greatest grand finals of all time. Survey is up on the channel. I put a post up ranking 4 of my favourite grand finals that I've seen. 2015, 2016, 2023, and 2025. 2015 is ranked higher this time than the previous time I did a grand final ranking of greatest grand finals of all time. I think I didn't have 2025 on that one. I don't know why. I might have done. But this is, I think, with recency bias. But Michael Maguire got the team fit. They didn't like it to begin with. They're not going to like it. Get it working. Greatest commentary rant ever. That was diabolical. But mid-season, they weren't happy with it. Second half of the season, the run into the finals, making the top 8, obviously important, making the top 4, I believe, and then that run to the grand final, fitness was a key part, because in their do-or-die games, they came from behind and won tight games, and then they held on when players are out on their feet. Players have gone off injured. They're all over the place. Both starting halves have gone off injured. One's been knocked sparko. The other one's limped off and been carried off. They've got no half-backs in control. You've got players dropping all over the place, concussed and injured and all over and out of position. And they won the game. And fitness was a big part of that. Who do you get to replace Sean Wayne? Not a clue. Michael Maguire is just, would like to see, but he's doing well. I don't think he's wanting to give up on the Brisbane job, even though he has coached New Zealand and a club side, which was West Tigers at the time. State of Origin, they wouldn't let him be a club and State of Origin coach, which I thought was just brain dead, really. But he did State of Origin, you know. Yeah, I know he had success over here. I just can't remember. I didn't remember which team. So he's won wherever he's been, apart from West Tigers, right? He transformed the New Zealand side. Admittedly, the last World Cup, bit of a hiccup, didn't quite get over the line, but he transformed that New Zealand side, put a record win over Australia with that New Zealand side. Players that play for him, apart from West Tigers, because the attitude's all wrong with the whole club, players end up being fitter. He's a hard taskmaster in that way, but players are fitter and more accountable. He doesn't have the prima donnas. He doesn't, you know, it's fitness. Fitness is key. And that won him a grand final. Most of the people at the Gold Coast matches are away fans, same as Sydney Roosters, a lot of people in the stadium. I wouldn't say they're all away fans. Like, you can see more home jerseys. You can. But even then, attendance has still improved at Gold Coast, whether it's away fans or home fans or a bit of mixture of both. I still think Gold Coast Titans games, there's more fans in attendance regardless if they're home or away. That's my opinion on that. I do think Sean Wayne, his time's up. That we're taking retrograde steps here. And George Williams is never captain for. Look, as a Canberra Raiders fan, how that departure went. I think he's decent. I think he's a decent player. I don't think he's leadership material. Although his try in the third test was one of the best tries you'll see in a while. Not going to lie. Fantastic try in the third test. Best bit of England play in the entire series. But that was just him being a support runner. That wasn't him creating. That was him finishing it. Again, that lies with the selectors. That lies with the coaching setup, and that is a criticism that has been labelled. Is he's got his favourites, as Sean Wayne, but look, he says he's not going anywhere. It'll be interesting to see what the RFL say over the next 9 months. What the decision over the next 9 months, because the World Cup obviously at the end of next season. Honestly, and I'm going to be quite honest here, I don't honestly know if he does go, if he is sacked or resigns, who you do get in. Do you get someone who knows the Super League or a coach who's coaching the NRL? Or it doesn't matter. I don't know who you would slot in there who's going to change things. Let's be honest. I've still got a bit of drink left. Lovely. So I don't know who you would get to replace. I would like to see Michael Maguire. I wouldn't mind Mark Maguire. Has Wayne Bennett, has his golden glow reached an end now where would he have the energy to do it just for the World Cup? I don't know. But Wayne Bennett, apart from that 2019 Lions tour, I think did pretty well with the England setup. But you can see, I would say this, that England team in 2017, admittedly they lost both games against the Aussies, 6-4 and 6-0. They were two of the best games I've ever seen of Test rugby league. The sheer battle and the arm wrestle. To go from that to shipping 30-odd points in 2 of the 3 tests and only scoring 2 tries in 3 tests in 8 years is concerning. The drop-off in an 8-year time frame is very, very concerning. Now, where do we go from here? I don't know where we go from here, but I think the structures of the game are broken. And a big part of that is the TV money and is the TV deal and engaging with a wider audience. And that's also the overseas audience outside of the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and south of France. We are talking the North American audience. Now that we've got the NRL going to Vegas and taking a Super League game with that weekend, the Vegas weekend, they definitely need some way or somehow to work out with the broadcast partners how to get a better media rights deal overseas. That's what transformed the Premier League. That's what transformed European football, was cracking the North American market in the 90s. And in part, yes, there was a World Cup. And in part, David Beckham at the end of the 90s, early 2000s, I think it was 2003, 2004? Was it 2004 David Beckham goes to the LA Galaxy? Or was it a bit later? When David Beckham goes over to the MLS, the rest is history. But it was also happening before then. Between 1994 and 2004, that's where the Premier League and UEFA and the Champions League and the various European leagues cracked the US media market. And yeah, in part, David Beckham does help that. But it starts in 94 with the World Cup and it culminates with David Beckham joining the MLS. We need something like that in regards to that cracking the media market, even if it's just a million or 100,000 extra viewers. Getting a TV deal that encompasses the US market is crucial. Absolutely crucial. And it's not as if the time zone difference is a killer. It works for the Premier League. We're only 5 hours ahead of the East Coast. And depending when the clocks change, 4 hours at points in the year, depending on the clocks changing. And you're only at most 8 hours ahead of the West Coast. Okay, so bear that in mind. Now, I do think potentially flipping the regular season back to a winter season and having the Challenge Cup final and the Super League Grand Final as the two biggest games of the year at the end of the season, I think is rather than having the Challenge Cup partway through the year, doesn't work. To be honest, that'd be more one of the changes I would make. Is again putting that focus back on the traditional competition. That that would be something that I would do. And there are other things, but I would definitely like to see more engagement on the media side of things and even social media in regards to North America. And people go, oh, you're never going to crack North America. Trust me, if you can get rugby league into more American households, they will see the similarities with the NFL and college football, American football. And they will see that there's more action, there's more balls in play for longer, there's more actual action happening in that 80-minute period. And they will buy in. It's a very simple game to follow. Very simple game to follow once you've watched 4 or 5 games. You're like, you have a rough idea what's going on. Whereas with rugby union, it's a bit more complex and you have to go into more depth to describe each individual position and why the game is stopping and starting, why the referee's blown a penalty or a free kick or a short-arm penalty, as they do for the American audience. But there you go. We'd love to see a Las Vegas style weekend play in London. I think the NRL are considering something like that. Peter V'landys, love him and loathe him, because he's a very divisive figure. Down under. I've just got to rotate. There we go. I do apologise for constantly rotating, but I've got a very, very bad back. And it's very, very painful. So I can't sit up too long and I can't lie down for too long. Unless I'm on my side. I don't think doing a live stream literally on my side like that in the recovery position is going to work very well. We could try it one time. Just watch me in the recovery, but that's because that's the only way I can be comfortable is on my right-hand side, which means the laptop's going to have to go over there, and I'm going to have to lie on that side, and we could try it one time. It'd be interesting. Peter V'landys has come out and said that they are considering like sort of similar to what the NFL are doing with their global series and Major League Baseball have done, and the NBA and the NHL taking games overseas. And they have potentially discussed taking, similar to Vegas, games to another country, potentially London. And you could definitely see that kind of spark plug being plugged in, the light bulb going on, the fuse being lit. Now, I would say the Emirates for me works best as for rugby league. I remember watching the World Cup semi-final between Samoa and England, and I was going to go to that game. I looked at ticket prices; they weren't overly expensive. Talking about ticket prices with FIFA and what they've released, very, very affordable. It just so happened the game was on a Sunday and not a Saturday, and therefore it made travel a no-go. The travel was the problem. And the weather wasn't great. I wasn't feeling well. Work was a bit nightmare at the time. And I decided against going to that semi-final. But looking at the crowds at the Emirates, and the Emirates being a wider playing surface, because NFL, remember, NFL playing surface is not the same size as a rugby league playing surface that the NRL uses, whereas the Emirates it actually works. There's enough space around the pitch where you can put that extra bit of turf just for the game. And it's an easier stadium to get to. It's closer to central London than Wembley, so you can make a bit more of a weekend of it. It's got good transport links. King's Cross and St Pancras are the international. St Pancras International is literally a few minutes away by train. You go past the Emirates on the train north towards Cambridge and the east of England and all that in the north. And it's a more accessible stadium. And when you're that close to St Pancras International, if, for example, you can't fly into London as in Australia, but you fly into Paris, if that's where your flight ends up, you can just get on the Eurostar and you're there within 2 hours. So I think for me, the Emirates works better for the international fan because of where it is in that bit of north central London. And you're that much closer to the centre of London as well, with the underground and King's Cross and Pancras. That train network and underground network is just there. That transport hub's there. And so I think it works better, and it worked well for the World Cup as a host venue. And I think it as a stadium, even though it's 20 years old, it's a fantastic stadium. As modern stadiums go, I like the Emirates. It's not overly in your face modern, but it works really well as a venue. Fans are very complimentary about the Emirates, more so than other stadiums, for the view lines and the overall experience. There's a reason why Arsenal, doesn't matter how well or bad they play, have got a lengthy waiting list for season tickets. And it's a well-loved venue. Fans who've been there, home and away, have spoken quite highly of the Emirates. I think they've said while it's one of those modern designs that can lack a little bit of soul, it's well designed. The sight lines are good. Even if you're up in the nosebleeds, you've still got good sight lines. The seating is really comfortable as well, not gonna lie. And it's a very accessible facility, very accessible. And you don't have to do too much to change the markings on the pitch, and they did very well at the World Cup a few years ago. Better than Bramley Moore, the Hill Dickinson, where they really didn't do well with the pitch markings. They did really well with the Emirates. But Wembley, unfortunately, I think Wembley's got flaws to it. There's been a lot of criticism of Wembley from rugby league fans and just sports fans in general. And anytime you have an event at Wembley, the central tier is for the corporate. And so that's when the empty seats look really bad. And then you have the upper tier. If you can't sell Wembley out, it's going to look bad. And that's something rugby league has consistently, and I do stress this, consistently failed to do over the last decade, is sell out Wembley. And that is a problem when you're trying to sell the sport to a global audience. If you've got a half-empty Wembley or Wembley with empty seats, it doesn't look great on the live broadcasts. Advertisers will see that, TV executives will see that, even social media executives will see that and going, okay, it's that doesn't look great. That's why I would go with a smaller stadium that's still big but smaller, which you know that rugby league can sell out. That is accessible with public transport, especially international transit as well, with the international Eurostar terminal, and is actually closer to the centre of the city. If you want to take a game to London, now they've also hinted at taking games to France, like Paris. They've hinted at taking games to Barcelona, although Barcelona right now politically with the anti-tourist kind of vibe and protest there, maybe not. But they have hinted at it. I think he gave an interview a couple of weeks ago where they were considering this option for some time, 3-4 years into the future. So it's something that could happen. I can see it happening. Especially if the London Broncos make Super League, I can see that being with the Australian involvement in the ownership there with Darren Lockyer. I could see that potentially becoming a reality. Yes, but look, as a rugby league fan, even though I live down near London, I would say this. I would say that if you are going to use a venue in London, they need to reconsider the use of Wembley and look at, yes, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Yes, West Ham with the Olympic Stadium. Arsenal, Obviously, there's plans for Crystal Palace to redevelop Selhurst Park and increase the capacity and modernise the stadium. So there are other. I mean, London Broncos used to play at Fulham, and Craven Cottage has had upgrades and modernisation. Now, yes, it's smaller, but again, it's still a fantastic stadium. So, and while obviously, and they've even used Charlton Athletic Stadium as well. And of course, you got when they use Plough Lane, they could use that as like a warm-up training facility, or the London Broncos play there. So there's options. It doesn't matter the size of the stadium. There's options like and such. But I live near London. I don't live in London. I live 30 miles outside London. But people forget. People seem to think that you live close to London. It's bloody expensive as a city. That's a big problem. It's very expensive in London right now. Way more expensive than people realise. The actual costs in London have skyrocketed over the last 6-7 years. Just for food and drink. I mean, last time I went to London to watch a sporting event, I went with a good friend of mine. Although it's only ice hockey, and we're talking about, lower level British ice hockey. But we made a day of it, me and my mate. It was bloody expensive. Not the tickets for the ice hockey; they were very affordable. Very affordable. Game itself was brilliant. Proper. We had a good time. Good banter with the other team, as we were the away fans. We had a good experience. The locals were brilliant. The local pub right by the ice arena they were you're going to the game? Yep. They realised as soon as we walk in, we were going next door to watch the game. We had a good experience, but my God, the prices. And this is back in 2017? Yeah, it was back in 2017. The prices we had to pay for things back then were like eye-watering. God knows what they would be now in a pub or a restaurant or a cafe, or even just getting I don't smoke anymore, but I used to smoke at the time. They were eye-watering prices in London. So God knows what it is now. I mean, I know it's got very expensive, and people are very, very critical. Even those travel vlogs are very critical of how much things cost in London. It's not cheap anymore. It never was, but it's not very affordable. So you could consider looking at other stadiums and other cities that the NRL could go to. And there are plenty of cities in the south of England, the Midlands, the north, which have some sizable stadiums and could do very, very well and attract a decent sized crowd with no empty seats. But you've got to expect, okay, there's less fans in attendance because the stadium's a bit smaller. But there's some fantastic modern facilities and stadiums they could use and play at. But as we've seen with FIFA and their World Cup ticketing and the prices they're expecting fans to pay before flights and hotel accommodation and food and drink, that's eye-watering. And that's something that needs to be considered as how much they charge for tickets. And that's the thing that the NRL can control. Very similar to what FIFA can control. Now, FIFA's response to being like ripped to shreds by everyone in the media, fans, social media is we've got some cheap tickets. They haven't changed the prices for any of the other ticketing bands, but they've released $60 tickets, which very limited allocation, very small numbers. And you're thinking to yourself, but you haven't actually lowered the other ticket prices. You haven't made other prices affordable. You're just bringing in this cheap band, which is going to sell out immediately and is going to make you do your positive PR. Not good enough. Ice hockey is class. It's my winter sport. When no rugby league it's full on. Love it. Are you going so well? Are you Scottish? Aye. There is unfortunately always a Scot in the group, a wee jock. But Solway Sharks. I used to go like quite regular. I went to every Bracknell Bees home game from 2013 until the pre-season in 2019. I went to every Bracknell Bees home game for 6 years. I think it was 6 years, yeah. I went 6 years to every single home game. And then I moved away to a different town nearer to London. And then I moved back during COVID. And then I live where I live now, and the team obviously moved to Slough, and then they've not gone out of business. They've mothballed for the year. They're trying to source obviously further funding. They've taken a year's break. Very similar to what Basingstoke did, very similar to what Telford did to negotiate a funding solution, because that's a big concern is the costs. But no, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're watching the Elite League or the National League or even the Scottish League, which is the same as National League North or National League One. It's a fantastic sport. I think it's one of the fastest growing sports in this country. The problem is the facilities. It's facilities and funding. That's the massive problem that we as a ice hockey nation face. And I constantly see North Americans slagging off the Elite League and the National League, and they haven't watched a game or haven't watched a full season. And they've never been to an actual game here. They just watch little clips that people post on YouTube and post on social media. I've never watched a full game. They haven't come over to experience the match night experience and understand that we actually do have a sizable fan base here. We're just let down by, again, mainstream media, funding, and infrastructure and development, and facilities. That's what lets the sport down. And the governance is a bit of an absolute. Well, the governance is a shambles, but all sports governance is a shambles, in my personal opinion. Crikey, sports governance and competence don't go in the same sentence. But no, the problem that I think people have, the sport has, is media exposure, good governance, which is unfortunately lacking a lot of the time, and funding and infrastructure. They're the issues that the ice hockey faces in this country. And I've done to be fair, the ice hockey videos I've done on the channel have performed rather well over the years. I don't do as many as I should. I think I should do more, but they tend to perform quite well. I've got a fair few Canadian and Canadian subscribers, and a fair few subscribers from American hockey cities that follow the channel. Not as many as I would like, but there's a fair few. Now, would I like him to be more active in the comment section? Absolutely, but not everyone wants to comment. They can just like the video, watch the video, support that way. That's fine. But lately, actually, the Canadian viewership has improved. A lot of strong viewership from Canada over the last couple of weeks. This year, Canadian viewership has been really strong. And what is ironic is I've got a fair few supporters of the channel, viewers of the channel from Cumbria. Ironically, there's a couple of Cumbrian subscribers and viewers. Fair few, actually. I don't know what it is about the north of England, but and parts of Scotland, but there's some real strong support from parts of the country that really surprised me. I'm really surprised with the support I get from, especially the northeast, like Newcastle and Sunderland. Well, there's some real strong support from that part of the world. I don't know what it is, but I've always got on with Geordies and Mackhams. Always. I've always had a good relationship with people from Sunderland and Newcastle. Always. It's just a part of the world that A, I want to visit, but B, that I'm really connect with the people there whenever they're down here. A good friend of mine went to university in Newcastle, actually. I think he actually moved up there permanently, and he's, haven't heard from him for a little while. But guy lad I went to school with moved up to Newcastle when he went to uni, and he stayed. He loved it so much he stayed, got a job in the city, and is doing rather well in the northeast, which is good. That's I think something this country at least can be quite proud of is how all our communities sort of link together a little bit. We have our rivalries, But at the end of the day, I think, yeah, it's something that, you know, I think the community we built here as well. I like the community we built here. It's not, it's not a massive community, but it's a community nonetheless. And it's, it, I've always said I do this channel as a hobby. I don't take it too seriously. If I was to make a bit more money of it, if I was to be able to do this full time, that would obviously be something that's on the bucket list to do this full time. But and I would love to do that. But as I said, I've got a full time job. It's not a glamorous job that I do, but I've got a full time job, and therefore I've got full time commitments, and I do this as a hobby. But it's definitely, I'm very proud of the community that we have on the channel. The community that's been built, and that for me is quite humbling. I know it's not a massive number of viewers and not a massive number of subscribers. There's a few videos that have done quite well, but I'm kind of happy with what we've got here. Of course, there's always room for improvement, and yeah, I could do things probably a different way, and that might increase viewership and engagement. But I'm actually quite happy with just doing this the way I do it, and I enjoy doing this. I do. It's a nice way to break up things and go about things. And oh Christ, we've got a weather warning. We've got a moderate rain warning, and it's just going to rain and rain and rain. And then tomorrow when I'm at work, it's going to rain and rain and rain. Shit. Oh, let's just put a damper on things. Oh, that's what I want. BBC News. No, I mean, let's just check some of the news headlines on the sport. But no, I'm quite humbled by the number of subscribers we have and as I say, and what we built, and yeah, it's quite humbling. It's quite humbling where the channel's at and how where we're heading, I think. And right, let's have a look. Oh God, there's lots of negative headline. Right, this is how England can keep Ashes live on pivotal day. We played well, I think, on day one of the third test. Let's see what happens. Oh dear. Macclesfield forward Ethan McLeod, from a Wolves play, passed away in a car accident on Tuesday after the match at Bedford Town. Dear. That's sad. That is. Oh, the snicko in the cricket. The reprieve. So Alex Carey's controversial reprieve on the first day of the third Ashes test was down to an error by the operator of the snicko technology. He admitted he edged a delivery from Josh Tongue. He made 106 at the end of day's play. Oh dear. So the text failed again. But very similar to the Stuart Broad not walking a few years ago, when Stuart Broad obviously clearly edged it and didn't walk. So that's interesting that the tech in regards to didn't work. Active aero and overtake mode. Oh god, really more gimmicks from F1? Just get rid of the boost push to pass. That's basically what it is, push a button to pass. Don't like that. Active aero. This is why I prefer endurance racing. Yeah, I'm not going to read that F1 article. Right, you dog, Battle Dog, keep it going. Also, the reason why it's so bloody green up here in Cumbria is all the rain. It's called the rain shadow effect. It's a geography thing because I will explain the geography thing, but it's a rain shadow effect for the rain. We had freezing fog down here in Berkshire this morning. Bloody hell. Obviously, I'm a bin man by day, and I leave for work at around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Right. So last night I had a can of lager. It's the festive period. We're getting tips at work. So I had a can of beer and my dinner. And about 8 o'clock, I'm thinking, I'm going to have an early night. Let's check the weather. And it said, you've got a weather warning for fog. I said, okay. Potential for a bit of fog. It's not the end of the world. It's that time of year. It's not going to be the end of the world. But it didn't say it was going to be below freezing. So I was expecting it to be about 10 degrees and a bit foggy, which does happen. It does happen. It was just above freezing this morning. And I couldn't see more than 5 feet in front of my face. Now, I live on two main roads, but it's not quite a country lane, but it goes through some woods. There's a footpath, but it goes through some woods to a big roundabout, and there's a car garage at the end of it. And the other road is got big posh houses. I live in a crap block of flats, but there's some big houses. How to describe them? Both roads are dead straight, but the road I live on goes uphill, downhill, up. It's a bit of a walk. I couldn't see more than 5 feet in front of my face this morning, which was a bit terrifying on the road I live on because it's a dead straight road. And obviously, the lunatic boy races fly up and down it. And there have been fatalities on my road in the last few years. People have actually careered off a straight road and gone into the trees because it's woods both sides at points. There's some houses on it. And then at the bottom end, there's a lot of houses on it. But the bit I walk along before I get to the car garage is a few sections just has trees for about half a mile. And then there's a golf course on it as well. But the fogs this morning, Jesus. And when I was actually emptying bins today, they were frozen at like 9 o'clock in the morning. I've got lumps of ice. It was freezing. And it was 10 degrees colder than it was meant to be. So well done, Met Office. In regards to the rain shadow effect. Now, I live in the east of England. You live in the west of England. And the western half of the UK is very mountainous, hilly, and the eastern half is floodplain, basically. Some rolling hills, but it's flatter. I think it's a good way. Less hilly, less rocky. Is a good way to look at it. Very similar to how the US and Canada has elevation on the Rocky Mountains, and then the western half, the mountainous western half, and the more Mississippi Valley. Appalachians are mountains, but they're not as steep and not as high, but lower in the east, higher in the west. And it's the rain shadow effect. And so the rain is heavier in the west of the UK and Ireland than the east. And that's a known thing. And the majority of our weather actually comes from the west rather than the east. If the weather came from the east all the time, then where I live would be wetter than where you live. But obviously, again, the rain shadow effect would still work, which is why the Lake District has all those beautiful lakes like Windermere. And the Peak District's got some beautiful parts of the world, and Dartmoor. I've been to Dartmoor a lot. I've got family down in the West Country, so I've been Dartmoor, Dorset, Jurassic Coast, done all that. It's a beautiful part of the world. But I will say this: some of the weather that the southwest, Wales, Western Scotland, your part of the country's had horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Some of it, I'm not going to lie, it has been horrendous. And then some of the weather we're going to have, I'm not looking forward to the next 48 hours. Not going to lie, not looking forward to it, because where I live, we've had some flooding issues. Not going to lie. The woodland that I walk, well, it's the main road, but the woods I walk through, which is on the main road, there is some areas that are peat bog in the woods. And of course, this summer was quite hot and dry. It's only been in the last month that it's, again, boggy, peaty, filling up with water again, little ponds forming. Normally they're there all year round. Only twice have I seen it dry up, 2022 and this summer. And it's taken since early March when it dried out till now for it to be about normal, average. And there's a bit of the road I walk down that floods all the time. Hasn't flooded properly in about 2 years because we had a very dry winter. This time last year was a very dry winter. I think the winter before was quite dry. So technically we entered this time last year, we were technically in drought. And so when I always talk about how weather conditions can impact sport, I do this when I'm talking about, like, previews of tournaments or reviews of games. I went, well, the weather had an impact, or the weather didn't have as much impact, more of an impact. So, for example, I'm a Blackburn fan. 2 games this season we've got through right till the end of the second half. The rain comes down. Ewood Park doesn't drain because the River Darwen, obviously behind the Riverside stand, drainage has failed. The River Valley's obviously struggling to cope with the amount of water, and the pitch gets waterlogged because the drainage isn't working, and that's a fact. And we've seen it this season. It's cost us 6 points. It's bloody frustrating because we're always 1-0 up, and then it's a thing. Frustration's a thing. But again, Blackburn on the western side of England, northwest, quite I wouldn't say mountains, but it's on the Pennines, obviously, it's part of the Pennines. Quite high up elevation in regards. And then you go, my part of the country, we're significantly lower down. I technically live in the Blackwater Thames Valley. So it's where 2 rivers, I'm in an area where, I'm in the Blackwater, Loddon and Thames Valley river catchment areas. So the little streams that flow past where I live flow into the River Blackwater and the River Loddon, which then flows into the River Thames. And there's areas around here that flood all the time, and flood quite badly. And no, I used to be an F1 fan. I'm more now. I watch endurance racing now. I stopped being an F1 fan years ago, a long time ago. I used to be. I've got books. I've got posters. I stopped being an F1 fan a long time ago, even before Liberty Media took on the running of the sport, or of the category, because it's not a sport, because motorsport's the sport. But even before Liberty Media took on the rights to F1 and the running of F1 and the support package, even when Bernie Ecclestone was still in charge, I fell out of love with it. I think the regs are broken. DRS does just, thank God that's gone, but now you've got push to pass. So it's just, you've replaced one thing with another thing, which is a gimmick. How about you just make the cars, I don't know, easier to overtake, less wide, so they fit on Monaco, for example. I do like the touring cars. Now, I was brought up in the 90s, obviously, with the super touring, British touring car era, and the 90s DTM, which was just like fantastic. So we're talking about the true DTM of the 90s and the British touring cars of the 90s, with the manufacturers having their own factory team and then the customer team. So you would have 2 BMWs factory team, 2 BMWs as privateers, or the client teams. You would have factory support for teams. And of course, I love Le Mans. I love endurance racing. I love the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, which I actually prefer over the Le Mans rules in regards to how they do yellow flags, safety cars, and all that. One thing I don't like about motorsport right now is they've stopped the use of tyre warmers, and they've got rid of the intermediate tyre as a tyre choice with a lot of them. A lot of motor racing categories have got rid of the intermediate tyre, and they've also got rid of tyre warmers, which is just suicide. When you look at, for example, we've got 24 hours of Daytona in a month's time, or thereabouts. And there'll be periods in the nighttime, even in southern Florida. Bear this in mind, even in Florida, on Daytona Beach, where the nighttime temperature will drop. And then you can't get the heat in the tyre. And so you've got a hypercar or an LMP2 car coming out the pit lane. The GT car has got better mechanical grip, and better braking because it's got ABS, whereas the prototypes don't. And they're struggling to corner. They're struggling to grip around corners, and they're being overtaken by a GT3 car. Then factor that into, let's say you've got a wet race or a race which has got changeable conditions, and again, the track surface temperature is lower. It's just like watching, Bambi on ice. They're just struggling to get. It's like Spa. My favourite circuit is Spa. And a lot of people salivate over the Nürburgring Nordschleife or the Nürburgring full 14-mile, 400-odd turn course, right? My favourite circuit is Spa, because Spa is a baby Nordschleife, and it's also a mix of the Nordschleife and a little bit of like Thruxton, and you've got a little bit of Road America thrown. Spa is the ultimate circuit. There's only the bus stop chicane right at the end of the lap, which is going to, and turn 1, which actually used to be the last turn, but they changed the alignment of the pit lane. Apart from 2 corners at Spa, which is the bus stop chicane and turn 1, you are literally flying there at, basically you're on full throttle. It's the ultimate circuit, in my opinion. I think it's a better circuit than Le Mans, but just for the elevation changes, I think there's more elevation changes at Spa than the Nürburgring from highest to lowest when you're going up to down in a very short space of time. Eau Rouge, flat out, very few categories can do. You cannot do it in an F1 car anymore. You have to lift. You cannot go flat out. Jacques Villeneuve and Zonta in qualifying, I can't remember if it was the 98 or 99 season, had a bet between each other at the Williams team of who could go flat out for longest through Eau Rouge on a qualifying lap. Both of them smashed out. Both of them crashed right off their cars. Had to use the backup car for the race. Both Jacques Villeneuve and Ricardo Zonta had an insider bet between each other in the garage who would go flat out through Eau Rouge. Proves that even in the late 90s, F1 cars couldn't do it. The aero wouldn't allow it. It was just impossible. You would just straight across. I don't think an F1 car has been able to go flat out through Eau Rouge since the 80s, turbo era. I think that's the last time an F1 car could go flat out through Eau Rouge. It's been 30, 40 years at least. And I think Spa is the ultimate circuit. Ultimate circuit. Now, people obviously wax lyrical about Le Mans and how it is the true ultimate endurance test. And yes, it is. But I think Le Mans works better than Daytona because the lap's a bit longer. You've got that a little bit more distance. But I prefer Petit Le Mans at the end of the IMSA season, and I prefer Imola as circuits. I'm a little bit more hardcore than your average motorsport fan because my favourite circuits are the ones that are going to kill you. Spa, Thruxton, Imola, Road Atlanta. You're probably going to die on one of these. I mean, this is why they don't do track days very often at these circuits. Thruxton, I think, is one of the most dangerous circuits for average speed as well. It's one of the fastest average speed circuits. Yeah. Even when F1 cars, the British Grand Prix was being hosted at Brands Hatch, testing, they weren't, if they were doing any kind of car testing, because obviously the safety standards have changed. Even back in the 70s and 80s, they were like, we're not going to allow you to test at Thruxton. If you're a British-based team, you'll die. They were that terrified. And you're only allowed to use the hard compound tyre at Thruxton because, tyre wear, they were like, you'll die. Not going to lie, Thruxton's one of my local circuits as well. One of my favourites. So I just love Thruxton. It's you've got to have big balls to take on Thruxton and take it on bravely. It's a fan favourite. I've got I know people who go to Thruxton all the time. Thruxton is a fan favourite of a circuit for a lot of fans. I don't think it gets the appreciation from the mainstream motorsports media that I think Thruxton should. If they would never get it up to F1 category status, but it has to be one of the most dangerous. Imola's obviously more dangerous, but for good reason. Spa is obviously iconic, but Thruxton is a little devil of a circuit. It's so quick. You're done. The lap is so quick. You have no margin for error. You get it wrong at Thruxton, you are in serious trouble, and you're probably not completing the race. Not because of mechanical, it's because you've really just written off a very expensive vehicle, and your team boss is probably looking at his insurance claim, going, "Oh," and his parts bill, going, "Eh," and that's a good outcome. There've been some really in the British touring cars, superbikes. I think they've had some endurance races there and some GT races there. There's been some horrendous accidents at Thruxton, and a lot of teams, if they want to do any mid-season testing or pre-season testing, when it comes down to getting the insurance, they don't test at Thruxton. Because in testing, you want to push your car or your bike to its limit. You want to turn up the wick fully and work out at full chat how long your tyres are going to last, what your fuel burn is going to be, or your energy if you're using an EV, electric vehicle, and how long it is before at full throttle, and full chat, going full blast. No conserved tyres, conserve how long you last on your fuel burn, your tyre wear, or your energy if you're using a hybrid like in endurance racing, for example, or if you Formula E, for example, obviously they use electric. Track limits at Thruxton is full of. You get it wrong at Thruxton, you're in a bit of trouble because even the gravel traps don't tend to stop you. But no, Thruxton is actually one of the most dangerous circuits. You listen to interviews and you listen to drivers and riders, and when you're talking about Thruxton and the speed and the challenges of it's not the longest circuit. Just remember that it's your average length circuit. But they talk about the challenges of the elevation changes, the speed, the apexing, carrying speed through the corners, the flowing nature of the circuit, average speed, tyre wear, setup. They're like, yeah, it's a challenge because the lap is of such a length and the average speed you're going at is of such a thing. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. But neither is Snetterton. Snetterton is 2 track layouts, the 300 and the 500 Snetterton. Yeah, Snetterton's got some high speeds in it as well and some various track configurations. Snetterton doesn't have the one section of Snetterton that is iconic is the bomb hole, because Snetterton, ex-RAF airfield, the Luftwaffe decided to drop a 250-pound bomb on the airfield, left a rather sizable dip called the bomb hole, which is a very iconic corner where you go in and mid apex you drop down and you pop out. So you're going in apex your car or your bike, and you're actually in a dip. So that unsettles your car or unsettles your bike going through the apex. And it's not a slow corner, the bomb hole. You're going through the bomb hole at some speed. It's not. there isn't a slow corner. It's not a slow corner. It's a challenging corner. And getting that just slightly wrong, you're offline at best. At worst, your race is done. You are not recovering from that. You've collided with another vehicle. Don't try and overtake going through the bomb hole. You want to overtake coming out of the bomb hole, because the vehicle in front has got offline at best, and you can get up the inside of them. At worst, you're on the inside. You get unsettled going through the dip. You hit the other vehicle. Your race is over. Be it because you've spun them or they've spun you. You've pitched around, broken a drivetrain, or in the bike's case, you've wiped out, bikes have flipped. And that is your race done. The bomb hole is an iconic corner. Deer Leap is another one. One of my favorite. Deer Leap is brilliant, especially when it comes to the superbikes. Deer Leap is just, that croft is something else. It's just Thruxton is my favourite circuit. in the UK. Spa's my favourite circuit overall, and I think Road Atlanta is a mix of Thruxton and Spa and the Nürburgring, and got a bit of everything. That's my favourite North American circuit, with Watkins Glen and Road America tied for second. I don't like modern circuits. I think the runoff's too much, and I think there's more margin for error with how modern even the traditional circuits that have had gravel traps removed or changed and more runoff, you can get away with making a massive error that 10, 20 years ago, that's your race done. You're being pulled out the gravel, and you're allowed to get away with it. So there's that. The darts, I think Little has got a good chance, obviously, with the way he's playing. But I don't really follow the darts much these days. I think I've reached a point now with the darts where I've fallen out. It's another sport. Well, it is a sport because it's professional and you get prize money. I would say darts is another one of the sports that I've really fallen out of love with over the years. Luke Littler and a few other players are making it interesting again and raising that kind of, he's a young lad, which then is engaging with a younger audience. And I think that's what a lot of sports are lacking, is that young, I wouldn't quite call him is he a superstar? That what I call the Tiger Woods effect. Tiger Woods made golf fashionable for young people from different backgrounds other than white, middle to upper class, and with money. Tiger Woods was the moment that golf needed. Larry Bird for the NBA was what basketball needed, because African Americans were dominating the sport. Larry Bird comes along, and without Larry Bird, you don't get Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman, Kobe Bryant, and Shaquille O'Neal. You don't. Larry Bird saved the NBA. Tiger Woods, I wouldn't say saved golf because it was always going to have a following, but made golf really global. Ronnie O'Sullivan, snooker, and then a whole variety of different football players. And then you've got Luke Littler in darts right now, who's flipped the sport on its head. Honestly, I think Luke Littler's obviously the golden child at the moment. Whether he wins is another thing. But with what he's doing in the sport right now and how quickly he's achieved it, it reminds me a lot of Tiger Woods. It reminds me a lot of how Tiger Woods, as an individual, Ronnie O'Sullivan, what we're seeing is comparable to those two individuals in how they've completely transformed and breathed new life. I think Luke Littler's breathed a lot of new life into darts. Now, obviously, his rise has been quite quick and very meteoric, but I think his potential to go from what he's doing now, which is fantastic, to legend status is there. I think the timing of his rise and what he's achieved, I think, is important. I think, look, Van Gerwen's a brilliant player. There's some other brilliant players out there, past and present, on the tour. But what Luke Littler's done in such a short space of time has really changed the narrative around the fan base. It's brought new interest from new people who otherwise wouldn't have watched darts, who are suddenly watching not just Luke Littler, but other players as well. Going, I like that player. I like how he plays or how she plays. And it's brought new people into the fandom. I think that's important. As I say, very similar to Ronnie O'Sullivan in the early 90s, very, very similar to Tiger Woods at mid-90s, with how in the individual sports, how they transformed it and brought new interest and a new set of fans. It's not just bringing fans in through the gates because you've sort of fallen out of luck. It's transcending it. But I don't really follow the darts anymore. It's not something that I don't really follow the individual sports anymore. I follow the team sports. I'm more of a team sport kind of guy. I used to follow the darts when I was younger, yes, but now it's not. It's a difficult one. I wouldn't say I wouldn't watch any darts because I do occasionally casually watch the odd game here or there. If I'm casually watching, but I'm obviously more of a team sport. That's more my go-to is the team sports and the especially the contact team sports, as we would say. That's more my cup of tea. It's a good way to look at it. That engages me more. I enjoy that more, and I feel more, well, not just engaged, but actively. It's just the enjoyment factor, what I get out of it as a sports fan, and everyone's different. Everyone has their favourite sports or sports they prefer over others. But yeah, darts. I used to love darts. Yeah, as I say, I used to have a dartboard. I've got friends who play on the. I've actually got a friend who actually plays on the darts circuit. And he's a half decent player, so I've got friends who play. But for me, yeah, it's not something that interests me anymore. Obviously, I'm going to keep an eye on Luke Littler and the other darts players, and obviously see who wins what. And I'll keep an eye on the headlines if a player's retiring or someone else wins their first title. And obviously, you keep abreast of these things. But at the end of the day, it's not a sport that I feel a connection with anymore. It's a good way to look at it. But Luke Littler is doing what Tiger Woods did for golf, Ronnie O'Sullivan did for snooker. Could you argue Roger Federer and Nadal and Djokovic and a few other players have done for tennis? Probably. Probably, yeah. But there's I don't know what it is, but I've fallen out of love with the individual sports where the individual, you're the player, you're playing your opponent, and it's you versus your opponent, rather than you're part of a team, they're part of a team, and you've got your individual performance, but it's part of a team. So I find that one interesting. But it's like Lando Norris obviously winning his first F1 title, and the resurgence of McLaren over the last year or so, I think has been very noticeable. The downfall of Ferrari this last season, and of course with Lewis Hamilton and his first season at Ferrari being an absolute shambles. Has Lewis Hamilton, stayed on in F1 a season or two too long? Potentially. I think Vettel retired at a good time. I think some drivers realised, right, I'm done now. I've achieved what I think I can achieve at the top end. I don't think I'm going to win anymore. It's like Alonso. Some are arguing, is Alonso, is he past his best? The fact that Alonso is still going is testament to his fitness, his commitment, and such. But it's going to be interesting to see how the regs work next year and whether that improves the product or not. But I don't like the current season format with the sprint races, and they've got too many races now. There's not much off season. Like, I remember when the F1 off season was a good 5 months. Now it seems to be shorter and shorter each year, and they keep adding more to the calendar. And I think the drivers get less time, to actually rest, recuperate. I think they're overdoing it with too much in the F1 calendar now. I think they're overkill. There's too much overkill there. You can have too much saturation. You can have too much of a good thing, and actually it damages the product. That's another thing I don't like about the F1 is there's the calendar's too congested. It's too long a season now. Not enough off season and pre-season and testing time and downtime. I think that's having an impact on the quality we're seeing. But then again, I look at the endurance seasons in the fact that the Asian Le Mans season started last weekend. Now they get all of January off and they're back in February for a couple of weeks, and then their season ends because it's a very short season. And we've got the European Le Mans season, which runs in parallel with the World Endurance Championship and the IMSA series as well, the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And you're thinking, some of these drivers don't get any time off, really, if they're in multiple different categories. It's a 24/7 commitment. You might get a couple of days here or there, but it's like these guys are never at home, never get any time to themselves. And I think that does have an impact again on the quality that we see on a race weekend, when it's just constant. Same with NASCAR and IndyCar; they don't seem to get a lot of time off, and their off season again is a lot shorter now because they've added more rounds, and more races. And you're thinking, is this good for them? When we talk about congestion in the footballing calendar, with the amount of games players are playing and the amount of games per season, and we're talking about the length of off season and pre-season, and has professional sport gone too far in that regard, where actually the players could use the athletes and the drivers, and could they use that little bit of extra? Have we pushed it too far? That's always interesting for me. Is there too much? Have we got too much of a good thing? I think we do. I think that could potentially, damage things a little bit and reduce the quality of the product we see at the end of the day on the TV or in the stands, when we go. It's the same like the NHL. They're now starting next season earlier. But they're extending the amount of games in the season. They're extending the schedule. So it doesn't matter what the sport is. They're trying to cram more in and expect the recovery times to be the same. It's just not. I think, as I say, the welfare of athletes, doesn't matter what the sport is, be it mental or physical, is important. And I think the broadcasters and the sponsors want to get their pound of flesh. And the team owners or venue operators want to, again, maximise their profit. So the more games you have, or the more events you have, the more fans go through it in attendance, buy tickets, more merchandise gets sold, but then you need to continue. And then the athletes or the drivers or the players, they want more money. And so it becomes a vicious cycle. And at the end of the day, I think that impacts the quality of what we see when we tune in on the TV, or when we go and buy tickets for a sporting event. We go, this so-and-so looks a bit tired and out of sorts, or that performance was a bit flat, or they're not at their best. Because I think athlete burnout, I think physical and mental burnout obviously is a thing, and I think the athletes suffer as a result as well. It's facts. It's going to happen. It's a reality of the world we live in, I suppose. It's a reality. It's a thing. So there we go. Anyway, always fun to have new viewers leaving comments in live stream in the chat section. That's always good to see. Some new faces in the chat section. But anyway, that's enough from me rambling. Thank you very much for watching. A bit of an impromptu one. I had a bit of extra time on my hands this afternoon, so I thought, why not? But killed a bit of time as well. And I want to part on this point, much like I said at the beginning, what happened in Australia at the weekend. We cannot allow division to divide us, the hate to divide us. And obviously, we've got to think about what's happened and how we as a society can do better, and how we can support each other better and look after each other. I think it's 2025, not 1125. You know what I mean? It's we should be doing better as a much wider society. And I understand the anger and frustration aimed at the politicians and aimed at the police and aimed at the security services and aspects of with some community leaders and those in the media, that there is quite rightly a lot of anger, and there is that misrepresentation, and there is some toxic stuff online. We can and should do better. So that's my parting point of the day. But thank you very much for watching, everyone. And I will have more content for you all very, very soon.